I took that as a credit.
So my name's John Herndon, and I'm a teacher at Austin Community College, and here representing our Austin Community College Literary Coffeehouse, the title of which is a hangover from the days in which we actually met at a coffeehouse. But I think last year we moved here to Malvern Books, and it seems to be going really, really well. And we're planning at present to, although I haven't discussed it with Malvern Books, but I think we'll be doing it, and holding our events here in the fall as well. We meet once a month during the spring and fall semesters. So we have one more occasion this season, and that will be on May 5th, when we'll be really privileged to have Cyrus Cassells, who is a professor at Texas State University, and his brand new book is out. I think it's called, if I'm recalling correctly, The Gospel According to Wild Indigo.
Wow.
Excuse me. So he's out there now kind of touring behind this, and I think he's read from it once in Austin, so this will be a pretty cool thing and a big privilege. So that's going to be May 5th, a Monday. And we also have one more event coming up here at Malvern this spring, and that's May 2nd, which is a Wednesday, and that will be the release of our Rio Review. The Rio Review is our student literary and arts magazine, and it's all student writing and student art, and it's edited by students and published by students. And this semester it's my privilege to be the faculty advisor, so I can definitely guarantee to you that they have done all the work. Because the way I define my role as the teacher in this class is that they do all the work. And I think that's really as it should be. So I like to start these evenings off with a little icebreaker, and as it happens, and I guess sort of reflection on my process. You know, as poets and writers, and especially as teachers, we often gas on and on about our process. So at least part of my process is really, really random. And from time to time, I clean up my office. And over spring break, I purged probably something like 300 pounds of paper out of my office, and I was really, really happy about that. And in the process, I found a couple of short poems that I had written and forgotten about. And when I found them again, I thought, oh, hey, that's cool. So I thought, if Ken didn't mind, I would use a couple of these to start things out tonight. They are very tiny. This one I called Hearing is Believing. A whale is never alone. He sings to others afar. The songs can travel 1,000 miles across the wide Pacific. And here's one called Wild Times in North Austin, which is where I live. I'm drinking a margarita with a hot mama hummingbird getting soused on agave nectar, until the bad boy swoops in and chases her through the trees halfway down the block. My luck. Probably wouldn't have done any better on 6th Street. So then I have actually composed a poem recently. I guess this is composed. And it's another in a long line of poems about grass. And there's a reference here, it may be obscure, so I'll say something. Indian blanket, if you don't know, is a wildflower, Texas wildflower, also called firewheel. So this is confession. I am a naughty boy. I sneak around and secretly spread seeds from my native prairie grasses and wildflowers into my neighbor's yards. Now, the young couple next door moved out, and the landlord mowed the lawn, and I noticed after the late March rains, Indian blanket, firewheel shooting up. I can only hope the next tenants are as inattentive as these last. Now you have to, I guess, get your charges where you can. So tonight it's also my pleasure to introduce you a dear friend of mine, Ken Fontenot. I think I probably first met Ken Fontenot in about 1979. I think that's the best guess that I can make. So it's been a while, and I have a lot of really deep respect for him. I think it's his second book, All My Animals and Stars, won the Austin Book Award early in its career. And more recently, a book of his, In a Kingdom of Birds, was noted by the Texas Institute of Letters as the best book of poetry for that year. And he has several other books, including a novel. Is it For Mr.
Raindrinker, yeah,
Raindrinker.
set in New Orleans.
Yeah, and also looks like he's going to read From Just a Trace of Moon. I think that's his most recent book. Ken is a native of New Orleans, and he's lived back and forth for a lot of years, and in Austin mainly for a lot of years, but forms one of those great interregional connections. And anyway, he's just a great poet, as you'll see if you don't know Ken. Please help me welcome Ken Fontenot.
So, I have been welcomed by spring, but then again, spring, I like to think, welcomes everyone. I have some new poems that I'll read from, 3 or 4, and then I'll read from the books. Keep track of time here. Okay. This poem is called Provincial. Electronic culture and its plethora of nouns I don't always know, but if I had children, grandchildren, they'd encourage me to keep up. Perhaps, obstinate me. I just read an Ammons poem which I wish I might have written. How wonderful could I afford his new collected I leaf through in the bookstore. He understood rock, oak ode, brook, as much as demigods, as much as elemental goodness itself. Reading, writing, and respite from such tasks. When I head for YouTube and all the classical music I find gorgeous, Glenn Gould with his genius for Bach, Hilary Hahn, so young, already among the great violinists of the ages. Ed Rock and jazz too, Miles Davis, who smiled, especially in his heart. It would be wrong to say music is the universal language. It just isn't. What I like, you may not. And those provincial in taste will not explore the same meals every day. To answer my father as he held forth in the 60s against Bob Dylan, I said, "So, what are you, a critic?" I guess my interest in music, you know, they say nothing that you pick up as you grow up is ever lost, and I played the clarinet badly in our high school band. Should have practiced more, but it did. There was one student named Linda Weber, and she was at 18 or 17 just a virtuoso, and I admired her, and I just kept my interest in music. I'm going to read, this poem is called Cello Concerto in B minor, and I'll mention his name. It happens to be Dvorak. And having listened to Sol Gabetta play Shostakovich's very difficult cello concerto and Schumann's concerto, goes on and on. Sibelius, so many wonderful concertos, but I just melt when I hear Dvorak, and especially the person who I'm going to mention who plays it. Cello Concerto in B minor. Play a cello and you play a human body. The torso is unmistakable, like a Greek statue without limbs. The passionate cellist, her orchestra encourages her cello embrace, for which she appears center stage. Dvorak has never sounded so good. What will happen to cellist Jacqueline Dupre? The stuff of tragedy? Look her up. Learn what silenced her. The music finishes. A short silence. At this moment, the joy in everyone could light an entire city. I would love to cry or to celebrate. No one any longer in the bland daily destiny of themselves. That's what a gust of fresh air almost does. That's how a saint, now welcome, will appear. Between last note and applause, her gift from the gods. Brief epistemology. As a kid, I never thought about words singing among other words without pianos, or about colors in tension with other colors, or about how a building, a beautiful one, seemed no different in spirit than a doghouse. Later, that knowledge came like self-consciousness. The seasons opened their doors, birds meant more. I took up languages that lead one to one's own. I took up whistling just for the hell of it. Justice arrived, saints presided, cats stretched. There were, in fact, a lot more yeses than nos. Love, when you listen to me, they're your words, and I'm listening. This is, I've met a lot of painters in my years, and this is kind of a composite. I was thinking about a lot of them. There's no one in particular, but I wanted to write a poem about the visual arts, and it's called To a Painter. More than the hummingbird motionless before a flower, even more than a whale within the range of touch, do your brushstrokes astonish me. I see something turning into itself. I see something blue in tension with something else red. I too have the will, but not your patience. So I use the stuff of which can be found in any dictionary. Are we very different? Look, the squirrel is going through its declensions. The vowels of sparrows emerge loud and clear. Paint those sounds, or rather that which delivers them. I will be standing by. I will be wanting to copy you in words. Thanks. the glad otherness of pandas. The loveliness of dogs merits conversation by 4 women in a coffee house. So I eavesdrop, enthralled by their laughter, caught up in the precision, being human. Warm days in February make me want to skip like a kid. Ever since 10th grade, I've been whistling to myself for no reason except that I need to establish equivalence with the birds. Bird, I say, have at it like me with song, a certainty the heart will come clean with joy. A certainty the moon is our own picture hanging in our own backyard. What light, what movement against the udders of sows. Only the stray cat is sad, meowing for attention. Believe you me, someone is putting out food, water. Believe you me, mothers are dressing their kids for a warm day. They are ready to be taught geography, math, and even how to give a speech before their class. Walt Whitman, I am picking up your brio where you left off in leaves of grass. I am gliding like a parachute which brings me out of a night full of dreams. Breakfast with eggs like the sun. Cars stop. Red lights are so serious. An afternoon read to wade into. A fly has a whole room to itself. The chairs get lonely as the cafe closes down for the night. Even I am closing down for another night. Can't do without a movie in my sleep. Can't say I never had a heart as true, as lovely as any panda. Thank you. So I'm just gonna, those are some new things, and I'm gonna kind of, let's see what we're doing here. I'm gonna go through the books and pick out something. I obviously, well, when you read the biographies of most poets, I'm thinking the Beats especially, all the jobs those guys did just to get by, and of course sometimes you get caught between jobs that make you money and you have to come up with something to put food on the table. So this is called a security job that I had. A security job. In the morning, I relieve him. He's had a long night, watching monitors, entertaining silence with his own lasting silence. As usual, the sun came up. I am here. I discover nothing new about this building whose presence, now on Sunday, ghosts inhabit. The past confronts me. Suddenly I am a boy, 6, swimming at a place called the Kinder Pump in Kinder, Louisiana. A big rice pump which pushes hundreds of gallons per minute. We kids like to stand under it, feel the heavy water as if it were a waterfall in the mountains. But there are no mountains, only flat land and pine trees. Last year, a baby copperhead bit my cousin Horace, who lived through it, who lives even now as I write this. Dear reader, we were meant to swim. Just the presence of the past either confounds us or elates us. Let me have this pleasant moment all to myself. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. My cousin Daniel, who's about to graduate from Mississippi College, just outside of Jackson, Mississippi, in May, time is pushing forward, and it's already a long time since he was 10, and he was my nephew, and still is. Called for Daniel. I can remember him as a little kid, and he's just really doing wonderful, and I'm very proud of him. For Daniel. Which me is this me I'm inhabiting, serious yet playful? Am I homo ludens, the man of games? I like to get into wrestling matches with my nephew, who is 10. That way I can make him laugh. His hair, blonde as mine was back when. Already he is beginning to understand science. Did you know I asked him that the ice in the glass is not really making the water cold, but in fact is absorbing heat? I know, he said. Dad told me. Good for you, I said, admiring the light his eyes reflect. Young and promising child, I am solving love as I would an equation. The answer is all of us. We mention the dead. The people are asking for something different. A black sun, a moon that never resembles an executioner's axe. The kids still dream about being old. The grown-ups still dream about being young. When winter came, the trees closed down their shops. They had better things to do than just look pretty. All of which explains a lot, but not why doves must always forage. Rain for 3 straight days. We speak of onions and presidents, of flowers and bombs. How self-assured the clouds seem, bitter and sullen and full of grace. We speak of passion and new shoes, of lemons and naked bodies. Oh, how long will it take for the deer to feel truly at home, to feel as if the clouds mattered at all? We have made new promises only to break old ones. We have mentioned the dead as if they were still alive. Remembering the wind. The wider the sea, the happier the whale. Few whales are bad enough, but think of the whales that get beached. See the birds, they are companions to the night. They know how grief is bluer than the sky. It seems the intellectual dwarves have taken over, and who would want it otherwise? We are content with those who claim simplicity is better than knowledge. Give us the gentle embrace of the wind, and we will be happy. Give us the cool nights of November, and we'll trust the earth once more, which is not so unusual considering how November, like a dream, welcomes everyone. We move out of our houses, we leave and arrive again. In a strong wind, we are quick to remember all the other winds of our lives. do two more poems. John, you remember, this month is 20 years since you and Bill picked a few tunes on the guitar at your house right off of Mopac. Bill was my friend, and he, sadly, he lapsed into depression, and he drank screwdrivers non-stop, and it got him, he just bled internally. But I wrote a poem to him. He was from a family of four, and no one in that family lived to be past 50 years old. Very sad. And I can still see him, and this poem says something about the banter that we had. It's called Each Day You Woke Still Pickled. Addressing the air at dawn, I found everything else silent except the radio I had meant to turn down. Another parched summer, another cloudless day, you no longer among the living, a ghost. I need a funny story from you, I said. Tell your memory to speak, you said, invisible. I never did learn what became of your body. You had little money. Did they turn you into ashes? Yours was a blessing only vodka would bestow. Without it, you could hardly breathe, as if someone kept pushing you underwater. You understood what Thoreau wrote about simplicity, but not what Goethe wrote about moderation. Still, I should have insisted. I should have said, Bill, I won't stay here and watch you die. One more poem. Maybe I'll end it on a light note. Things have been pretty serious. This poem is kind of something I talked about working as a security guard. Actually, I worked my way through Tulane as a meat cutter at a small butcher shop. You don't see them anymore, of course. The big stores, HEB, have great big meat markets, but this was a small meat market, which is sort of for locals to come and get. I sold pigtails and salt pork and neck bones and all kinds of things to people, and especially in New Orleans, where they used a lot of these ham hocks, for one thing, to season beans with, and so we sold a lot of those. In any case, this last poem is called Prerequisites. It deals with my former employer, Bob, Uncle Bob, not knowing what the new prerequisites for medical school was. He was still trapped in the past. Prerequisites. Homer Horton, known as Uncle Bob, took me aside in the butcher shop and said, if you go to med school, you'll be glad you learned how to cut up a side of beef. Of course, you'll have to take your Latin and your Greek. He was 65 in 65 when he told me this. He didn't know they weren't prerequisites anymore, nor did I tell him he needed to update his mental maps like a keen geographer. He sometimes bickered with the other butchers, but he was excellent with customers. From the freezer, I once brought him an oxtail because I had no clue what it was. So I asked, "Oh, that," he said, "that there's A fly swatter. Thank you so much.